On this week's episode on Cup of Joe, we cover the hot topics from the Integrated Crop Management Conference held this past week at Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds, and welcome to Cup of Joe. Today we have a really action-packed discussion today about things that were learned at the Iowa State Integrated Crop Management Series meeting in Ames, Iowa this past week. And we have a special guest with us today because Tommy Johns has got a meeting this morning. So Carly Wilkins has stepped in to bring in some additional information that she learned up at the meeting up at Ames. And she graduated from Iowa State University with an agriculture degree and works behind the scenes in the office here supporting sales staff and in many, many different areas. And of course, we got Turk Rigonator here, our general sales manager, and Ben Pieper, our agronomist. So we'll start off today with Turk. What did you learn at Iowa State's Integrated Crop Management meeting?
Well, again, this is the book that we got at the meeting, and you can see that that's the proceedings. And it's an excellent source of information. If you weren't able to make it to the meeting, you can get a hold of them and get that book for you. I don't know what the cost of it is, but I'm sure they'll have some for you. But there's a lot of information in there. But probably one of the most things that struck me or jumped out to me is how many sessions there were talking about weed resistant management. You know, one of the things that we learned that this problem is not going to go away. There is no silver bullet. In Australia, they've been fighting weed resistance longer than anybody has in their wheat crop. And we learned at the meeting that rigid ryegrass is one of the resistant weeds that they have over there. And currently, there's absolutely no herbicide currently in the market that will work on rigid ryegrass. It is resistant to everything available in the market now.
You know, Turk, that's really good information. You know, if you remember, probably 7-8 years ago, we brought Dr. Stephen Powell up from Australia to talk about this very thing, and he predicted that this was going to happen if we don't use integrated management to control these resistant weeds. So his predictions came true.
It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when it's going to happen and how long do we have to use the tools that we have available. Well, Ben, we went to several of these meetings. What did you find out?
Yeah, and I think that one of the key things to hit on there is that they're actually talking about seed destroyers, weed seed destroyers being a huge. I mean, it's an $80,000 to $120,000 option on some of the combines right now.
Is that's a machine that basically is like a hammer mill that destroys the seed as they're harvesting the soybeans?
Yep. Well, it's wheat over in Australia. They still got some things they got to work out, but you know, our engineers here in the United States that work for, you know, some of the big combine companies. I mean, we're there. We're getting close to the point where we can start tweaking the systems that they use in Australia, and having these, you know, $120,000 add-ons to destroy weed seed. Because if you can get rid of, I mean, that's the key place in the reproductive triangle that we look at. If we can stop it before the previous season and we can lower the weed seed bank, I mean, it makes it a lot easier to control some of the resistant weeds that we have in the future. So there's multiple different ways that they're using those weed seed destroyers, but I think it's definitely going to be a thing, you know, in the next 5 years. Just add one more cost to what we're looking at. So I thought that was interesting.
I remember Dr. Stephen Powell talking about that when he came up. Is that actually he was one of the ones that helped prototype the first ones in Australia. But the theory being that if you have less weed seeds out there, less weeds to try to control the following crop. So that's where we're headed, sounds like.
It does. That absolutely sounds like where we're heading. So we're trying to stay ahead of the front side of that.
Anything else, Ben, that you picked up that you found interesting at Integrated Crop Management meeting?
Just to stay a little bit on the weed portion of things, we had it touched on by Jason Norsworthy at one of our last meetings. We were talking about how there's target site resistance and then there's metabolic resistance to these herbicides. And water hemp is very quickly adapting metabolic resistance, which is a huge problem because you could have group 27 herbicide resistant water hemp and it hasn't seen 2,4-D or atrazine or anything like that in the past 20 years of the farming system. in Kansas, I believe, is where it was at, wasn't it? Is where they're seeing metabolic resistance.
I think it was Illinois.
Illinois. Okay, so maybe it was Illinois. But the metabolic resistance makes it automatically resistant to both your group 27s and your group 5s and some of your group 4s right off the bat without even using those herbicides. So it's going to be a huge, the crop destroyer, the weed seed crop destroyer and some of the things like that, it's going to be absolutely huge to make sure that we stay ahead of this thing and we're using the correct pre's, we're using the correct herbicide programs, because we absolutely do not want any more of this metabolic resistance to spread throughout the country.
So a farmer that's listening today, the take-home message is use that pre-emerge, right? Spray within the label. In other words, when weeds are small,
Yep.
and layer another residual with that post application.
Correct.
Layer those. Give that weed as many diversities of ways to kill that weed as possible. Is what you want to do.
Start clean, stay clean
Yep.
throughout the season, because a dead weed can't produce seed.
Yep, that's
So,
very true.
It's 100% clean fields is what we need to have at the end of the year so that we can stay ahead of this thing.
So back in the days when I was helping my grandfather pull weeds, that was good advice. You know, keep those resistant plants from developing.
We used to talk about what was the economic threshold for weed control. You know, how many weeds can you have out in that field for it to be economic for you to leave? Those days are gone. That thinking was flawed. It is zero tolerance now when it comes to weed control. Any weed left in that field is a problem that you're going to have to deal with in the future because of the weed bank that you're talking about. When you think about weed seed bank and you think about numbers, it's a numbers game. And the more numbers you have, the more opportunity you have to develop resistance. If you have very low weed bank numbers out there, your chances of developing weed resistance are very, very low. But the more you have, the higher the odds. It's like going to the casino. You know, if you got $1 million to throw in the slot machines, you probably win one once in a while. But if you got $10 to stick in the slot machine, you're probably not gonna have very good odds of hitting that $1 million jackpot. So it's really about odds.
Okay, Carly, what were some of the take-homes that you got from the meeting?
Well, I just took some notes here on my phone from Dr. Chad Hart, and
He's the economist, right?
right,
He's
right.
the one that talks about where the markets are going.
Yep, and a funny thing too is Turk and Ben were in that session too, and he is always called Dr. Doom. So it's also kind of, it's good and it's bad, because he said that he's always bringing new information and everybody says, oh, it's always forecasted bad. So some of the things that he was talking about was the tariffs and the export shifts. We just can't ignore that. And we have cut exports to China for soybeans by 96.5%. That equals out to be about 650 million bushels cut from China. But the good thing is we're finding new markets like Mexico and the EU, and Mexico increased by 88%, and they're our #1 export now, and EU was #2, and we've increased their exports by 142.4%. So he said he's short-term bear, but long-term bull, because markets always seem to shift and they'll settle out and find their place within the market. He also had a family counselor with his presentation this year, because he was talking about stress and the things that you can't control, because farming, a lot of it you have no control over. So you want to try to manage the things that you do have control over, like having a marketing plan and things that you can control versus the weather and other things, tariffs that
Outside forces.
outside
Politics.
forces.
Politics,
Yes. So that was interesting. And another thing too is he said North Dakotans, they got in the soybean game and now they're quickly out, just because they would ship from North Dakota right over to China, and now they just are finding that they have no
They have no
They're-
market to go to.
They're gone.
Yeah,
Yep.
my friend up in near Fargo, Carl Peterson, Julie and Carl, they run a seed company up there, and I know they've mentioned to me, that some elevators aren't even buying soybeans up there, and if they are, the basis is maybe as much as $2. So it does show that this is having an impact on farmers.
And another thing Chad said too was Egypt. And I didn't know about this, but he said when Egypt goes to buy soybeans, they are like the Black Friday shopper that goes to Walmart. They want to buy at the lowest of the low, and they'll find the market that has the lowest price soybeans. And he said Egypt is popping up as number 6 as total buyers on our export list. And he said that's a good thing because we know that we're at our low for soybean price. So I guess if you're optimistic, it's a good thing because it can only go up from here. So that's an interesting thing. I didn't know about that Egypt market.
Well, he was talking a little bit about the amount of we're down from China, but we're up in other places. The net
Right.
result was only a 450,000 or 150 million units of soybeans down. So we've already recovered a third of China's market.
Right, right. And looking at the economies of scales in other places, a lot of other peoples are becoming middle class, or other people's countries are growing their middle class, which means they're going to want to eat better. And so that's why I think he said he was bullish in the 3 to 5 years, because things will shift and settle back out within the markets.
So you stop and think about that. Really, how long have we been fighting these tariff situations? We've recovered a third of China's market in just, 6 months? Has it been not even 6 months since the tariffs kind of came into play? So I'm optimistic as well that within a year we will have these markets recovered and prices will start turning around.
Yeah, we got to be creating demand.
The other thing that was interesting in Chad's talk was the amount of acres. They're forecasting that the soybean acres are going to be reduced by 6 million acres this year, and corn is going to increase by 3 million acres, and the rest is going to be absorbed by cotton and rice and other things. So it's we're going in the right direction. It's not as gloom and doom as what you might think right now. And I think this next year will still be a tough year, but then look out, things will be better from there on.
Well, that's one thing farmers got going for them. They're eternal optimists. No matter what, they've been able to overcome adversity and do well. So that's great. Is there anything else that we should talk about from the Iowa State's Integrated Crop Management Series?
One thing that I do want to bring up is we talked about a couple ago, or last meeting, that was the time before, I guess, about the Endangered Species Act and as it pertains to spraying dicamba. And
that has to do with that 57-foot border, right?
The
new
57-foot
rule on the
buffer.
label.
And we were looking at the Fish and Wildlife site and looking at the endangered species. It turns out the EPA has their own website. It's called Bulletins Live, and that's the one that everybody has to go to before they can spray dicamba. And if you go in there and zoom into it and click on your county, it will bring up the herbicides that are affected and what the requirements are, and that's part of I think it's part of the requirement for every applicator to do. But it's a different website than the U.S. Fish and Wildlife site completely, and it is up and running and works good. We were on it here just this morning before we got on it. We will have that on our website and probably send it out on our social media as well.
Yeah, I looked at it just briefly too, Turk, and it looks like it'd be a great tool to understand if you're in those zones where you got to keep that additional 57-foot border around the other 3 sides of the field besides the
110 on the downwind side, 57 foot, and this is a mandatory buffer. It's not an option. So if there's endangered species on any side, then you got to have it.
And of course, if you purchase Liberty Link soybeans or Liberty Link GT27s, we don't have any buffers or borders to worry about And so that would make it a lot easier, wouldn't it, for the
Oh,
farmer?
yeah, it's definitely an easier system to implement for the farm. Less stress.
Less stress.
Yep. Control the things you can control.
And
Okay.
that kind of leads into one of the other things. Crop quality was a huge deal this year. They were talking about protein percentages, and everything is basically down. We have a fair quality crop out there, but one of the main things that they were talking about was in the next month and a half, as guys start to unload their grain bins and start to pay some of their bills, the elevators are going to be taking it very seriously. Mold on corn for being one, and damage percentage on soybeans on the other. So just be aware and be ready to blend your grain out and try to do everything you possibly can to maximize your return on what you have, because there is extreme variability in the state of Iowa for what the crop quality is.
Yeah, just too much water right at harvest.
That's absolutely correct.
Too many.
There were 2 sessions that I went to where 2 separate people having 2 completely different conversations. We're still talking about quality, but they both brought up it is going to be so important to have seed treatment on your beans because they're look at the weather that we had when we were harvesting. I mean,
The phomopsis is going to be a huge deal.
everything. You just need a seed treatment. And they said this is not the year to be pinching pennies on your seed treatment.
If there was ever a year, they said this is it to have seed
Yeah.
treatment.
And so far at Merschman Seeds, our average germination of everything that we've produced so far has been 93%. So we've obviously we use a seed scrubber for fungi on the seed surface, and it's doing a really good job. And we're seeing that in the non-treated germinations. You know, we're seeing a higher percentage of dead seed, which is related to the phomopsis, which kills the seed before it germs. So by killing the phomopsis on the surface of the seed, we get that seed to germinate normal. So far, so good at Merschman Seeds, 93% average germination. But yes, we've got some seed lots, or seed bins, I should say, that we're going to probably not use this year because we're concerned about the quality.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate the update. I know you spent a few days in Ames, and some of you, that's your old stomping grounds. I'm sure you're not as young as you used to be, but I hope you had a good time talking to some of your professors and reaching back out and learning some new things. And you know, at Merschman Seeds, we've always felt that education is really important. I mean, and so we invest in education. Our salespeople spend a minimum of 1 month out of the field in education activities to better be able to advise our customers on what the latest and newest information is. I'd like to close this session today on a private note. My mother passed away. Now, she's the co-founder of Merschman Seeds. She was a farmer's daughter and married my dad, and they ran a 100-acre farm just north of here and started out in the oats business. The story goes that at that time, there's 5 of us. I have 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers, but at that time there was just 3 of us, and they would put us to bed, and they'd go out to the machine shed where they would bag the oats up. And over the years, my mom did a lot of different tasks at work here. She helped all that she could. I would think her model would be family first, which evolved, as you know, into our company of farmer first. One of the things that she did was she was behind the scenes. She's the one that co-signed the guarantees on the loans that we took to run the business. Anytime there was help needed in the company, she was there, from the mailers. And then also later in life, as the kids grew up, she came and worked part-time with printing all of our tags, and she did all of our newsletters, particularly the mainliner with an offset printing press, and even to the point of printing our first seed guide that we sent out. Later on in life, she had the role of picking up the mail and distributing it. And she did that up until almost to the end. And one of the neat things about it, as our family would kid, she had the most important job in our company. And that's because she would pick the checks up from the post office, which is the lifeblood of any company, is cash flow. So Mom was very influential behind the scenes. I know my dad spent a lot of time on the road to develop this company, and she's the one that was the glue that kept everything going at home. We'll certainly miss her, and just thought I'd give you an update. Thank you.